Everybody rolls around. I lay on my weekday boots down. I put on my glove rags and pay the time. Hey, 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 hey. Oh, yeah, yeah. 'Cause that's when I party down. Party down. Party hard. Party down.
Welcome back to the Weekend Warrior Show. Or maybe I should call it the Weekend Warrior Snow, because we had almost 2 feet of snow overnight, and I'm basically stuck indoors, which makes recording this show much easier. Anyway, this week is mostly going to be all Scream 7 all the time, though I won't be seeing the movie until Wednesday night, with the reviews embargoed until Thursday morning. But first, let's go over the box office from this past weekend, where once again we have a lot of drab, boring new offerings. It might be too early to tell whether the nor'easter that hit the East Coast Sunday afternoon and evening will have much of an effect. Here in New York City, we got hit pretty bad. Theaters will probably close Sunday afternoon. I'm recording this on Mondays, and once again working off estimates that might change. I really like the fact that last week's Weekend Warrior show was just 15 minutes long, so I'm going to try to keep it at that length whenever possible, except for when I have an interview or a special guest. Cool. I've been writing and talking about box office for almost 25 years now, and these past few months have been like nothing I've ever seen before. You have this big weekend with 3 movies opening over 15 million, and then you have a weekend like this one where none of the new movies open over 10 million, and 2 of the movies open outside the top 10. What is going on here, and why are so many films being dumped into theaters with so little promotion or interest from anyone? It seems to be happening a lot on a week-to-week basis. Although I thought Lionsgate's I Can Only Imagine 2 would pull off a victory based on the success of the first movie, it ended up doing much of its business from early previews, which is also becoming more and more common. It's also something that affects how well a movie might really do its opening weekend, because a lot of the money seems to be coming from Thursday and earlier previews. The Lionsgate movie ended up in third place with $8 million in 3,105 theaters, almost $10 million less than the opening of the first movie in 2018. As is usually the case with these faith-based films, the movie got an A+ cinema score, and it was the only wide release that reported the cinema score. Reviews weren't as good, but still fresh with 62%, but reviews don't really matter for movies like these. Either way, the fact that I Can Only Imagine 2 didn't do as well as expected, it allowed 2 of last week's bigger movies to take first and second place. Sony Pictures Animation's GOAT had a smaller drop in its second weekend, still being one of the only family animated films in theaters, taking first place with an estimated $17 million, down just 38% from President's Day weekend, having grossed $58.3 million so far. Emerald Fennell's Wuthering Heights dropped to second place, down 57% from its opening weekend, with $14.2 million and $60 million domestic. We'll have to keep an eye on the 2 movies to see if either of them can make it to $100 million, but there are a lot of other movies coming out. GOAT might probably hold up better over the next couple weeks than Wuthering Heights. The third big movie from last weekend was Amazon MGM's Crime 101, which dropped to fourth place with $5.8 million, down 59%, with $24.7 million so far. That was followed by Sam Raimi's Sand Help with $4.5 million, down 49%. While many think that this movie is a huge success, it only has grossed $55.5 million domestically, and another $27.5 million overseas, which isn't that great, although the movie only cost $40 million to make, so it's going to make back its money. A24's How to Make a Killing, starring Glenn Powell, opened in 6th place with just $3.6 million in 1,625 theaters, averaging $2,191 per theater. Also below what I predicted, but this was a movie that barely got any promotion, even though it was the Monday mystery movie last week. Baz Luhrmann's epic Elvis Presley and Conjure did very well in its IMAX release into just 326 theaters. It managed to get further into the top 10 than I predicted with $3.2 million, just behind How to Make a Killing, but in 1,300 fewer theaters, with an average of $10,000 per theater. 8th through 9th place were filled with Kevin James' Solo Mio, Disney's Utopia 2, which had its 13th week in the top 10, could make it to 14th next week. Also, James Cameron's Avatar, Fire and Ash, held on to one more week in the top 10, with so many weaker offerings coming out. Oddly, one of those weak offerings also came from 20th Century, as the horror movie Psycho Killer was dumped into 1,100 theaters. It bombed very badly after receiving some of the worst reviews of the year, not getting a single positive review for a dreaded 0% on Rotten Tomatoes, with the popcorn meter being not much better at just 31%. I actually saw the movie on Friday and didn't think it was that bad. It was kind of mediocre, but I thought it went some interesting directions, and Georgina Campbell was much better in this one than she was in last week's Cold Storage. Even so, Psycho Killer opened outside the top 10 with just $1.6 million, which is even worse than 20th Century's Ella McKay back in December, opened with just $2 million. I think these might be some of the worst openings in the history of 20th Century, even going back to when it was 20th Century Fox. Although I did see that Warren Beatty's Rules Don't Apply did worse in twice as many theaters. Either way, Disney doesn't seem to care enough to really market any of these 20th century movies unless it's a franchise like Avatar or Predator. At a certain point, they should just give it the brand or sell it off to someone who cares. The only movie that did worse than Psycho Killer was Focus Features Midwinter Break, which again, I'm not sure anyone even knew existed. It got dumped in 800 theaters and made just $530,000. That definitely feels like a movie that probably should have gone straight to Peacock. Let's get to this coming weekend and Scream 7. But first, let's watch the trailer, which I finally saw for the first time in front of a movie this past weekend, having not seen it before then.
This is the moment where the supposedly dead killer comes back to life for one last scare.
Scott, why are you calling me?
It's not Scott. You're going to die tonight.
The Star Wars Scream franchise began with the late great director Wes Craven in 1996, who took an original horror screenplay from Kevin Williamson and turned it into a new take on the slasher subgenre he had helped evolve with A Nightmare on Elm Street 12 years earlier. With Scream, Craven did it again with a teen-driven slasher horror movie that included comedy while introducing filmdom's latest and greatest serial killer, Ghostface. It led to many imitators and parodies like the Scary Movie franchise. The original Scream was a huge hit, grossing over $100 million domestic, which at the time was rare for horror. That led to a quickly made sequel, Scream 2, a year later, which set a new opening record for horror with $32.9 million. That also made more than $100 million domestic, but it was a few years before Craven would make Scream 3, which opened even bigger but didn't gross as much domestically. Those movies started a whole wave of teen horror in the late 90s and early aughts, including I Know What You Did Last Summer, Final Destination, Jawbreaker, Valentine, and many more. For many, these early Scream movies still stand the test of time. In 2022, the filmmaking collective Radio Silence, who have their own sequel, Ready or Not, Here I Come, coming out this March, rebooted the franchise with new characters. Including Jenna Ortega and Melissa Barrera, these characters became known as the Core Four. The first of these reboots opened in January 2022. Shortly after the Omicron strain of COVID, but it opened with $30 million, the third highest after Scream 2 and Scream 3. A year later, Scream 6 opened with $44.4 million, a new franchise record, and was the first movie in the series to gross over $100 million domestically since Scream 2. Both those movies received B+ cinema scores, which showed that younger fans enjoyed these horror movies, and it made it even weirder when Scream 7 was delayed with so many issues. Paranormal Activity writer and Happy Death Day director Christopher Landon was brought on board to direct Scream 7. But the movie was hit with controversy when the popular Barrera was fired by Spyglass due to social media comments in regards to the conflict in Palestine after the Hamas terrorist attack in 2023. Ortega ended up bailing, and so did Landon. With that in mind, Spyglass had to go back to the well and figure out what to do with Scream 7. They did so by getting Kevin Williamson, who wrote the original Scream movie, as well as Scream 2 and Scream 4, and the werewolf movie Cursed, all which were directed by Craven. When Landon left, Williamson took over as director, even though he had only directed one movie, 1999's Teaching Mrs. Tingle, starring Katie Holmes and Helen Mirren, which I honestly can't remember if I ever saw it, but reviews are absolutely terrible, almost Psycho Killer bad. Part of getting Williamson back came with the coup that Spyglass achieved when it brought back Neve Campbell for the first time in 15 years. This would be the first time that we've seen Neve and Courtney Cox reunited since Scream 4, which should help it bring back some of the older fans. This cast is also joined by Isabel May playing Sidney's daughter Tatum, with other new actors including Anna Camp from Pitch Perfect, Joel McHale from Community, and McKenna Grace from just about everything, including Ghostbusters. Oddly, Celeste O'Connor from Ghostbusters is also in this movie, so you have to wonder if the Ghostbusters can bust Ghostface. We'll have to see. I also thought I heard rumors that Matthew Lillard, whose character died in the first movie, was returning. But again, I haven't seen the movie yet. The fact that Jasmine Savoy Brown and Mason Gooding, who played the twins from the Core Four, are returning makes me think they're going to be killed up pretty quickly, which is not going to go over very well with the newer fans, as it's not good for representation, among other things. I already covered the box office history of the franchise, though I did leave out Scream 4 from 2011, which was Wes Craven's last movie, and it didn't do very well. Better not just forget about it. Paramount was releasing Scream 7 into 3,200 theaters, and their marketing and promotion even includes a pricey Super Bowl spot. And I know that CBS Mornings will be covering the movie all week with the actors and Williamson doing interviews, basically because CBS is a Paramount affiliate. At this time, I've only seen the trailer for Scream 7 exactly once in a movie theater this past weekend, which is another reason why we don't know much about it. I'm definitely curious because I enjoyed the early movies. I enjoyed Scream 4 and the last two movies, but I'm dubious of Williamson directing, and his attempt to wrap things up by going back to the original well, we'll have to see if it works out better than it did for Beetlejuice. Apparently, ticket sales have been good so far, but the fact that Paramount aren't screening this for critics until Wednesday night with the reactions and reviews embargoed until Thursday is pretty worrying. It makes you think that Paramount might be trying to hide the movie. Maybe it's to avoid spoilers coming out about who might die in the movie, but also it could just be very bad. Paramount might be worried that bad reviews might keep people from buying more tickets who haven't already bought tickets already. We won't know for sure until about Thursday when the movie opens. Either way, I think there's excitement to see where things go. Because of that, I predict Scream 7 will open somewhere in the low to mid 40 million range. How well it does after that will rely on whether there are any good reviews and if the fans like it. Personally, I have a feeling this installment won't hit 100 million, with stronger movies coming out over the next few weeks. This will probably be the last installment for a while. Before we wrap things up, I'll touch upon a couple other movies opening wider this weekend. Neon will be expanding Baz Luhrmann's Epic into theaters nationwide this weekend after a strong IMAX debut. Although I don't have a revised theater count from Neon yet, I can see it being in over 1,000 theaters or more, and that will help it get into the top 5 with 4 to 5 million. And then on top of that, A24 is supposed to be expanding Harry Leighton's BDSM rom-com Pillion, starring Harry Melling and Alexander Skarsgård, into theaters nationwide this weekend, presumably into over 500 theaters. As usual, I don't have a theater count at the time of recording this week's show, but I can see that getting to the top 10 with 1 to 2 million. That's it for this week. Next week, it's March, and Pixar returns with Hoppers taking on Maggie Gyllenhaal's The Bride, as in Frankenstein, starring Christian Bale and presumptive Oscar frontrunner Jessie Buckley. Take it away, Jerk Bombs.
Yeah.